A very good morning to you all. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. As the year slowly draws to a close, Ukraine is focused on one thing, putting an end to the war. President Zelenskyy took to social media to reaffirm that while this goal may seem unattainable for now, Ukraine must remain committed to training military personnel to the best of its ability.
There's a lot of discussion in the media about lowering the draft age for Ukrainians to go to the front lines. We must focus on equipping existing brigades and training personnel to use this equipment. We must not compensate for the lack of equipment and training with the youth of soldiers. The priority should be providing missiles and lowering Russia's military potential, not Ukraine's draft age. The goal should be to preserve as many lives as possible, not preserve weapons in storage. The most important thing is to work together on how to end this war. That is our top priority.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has met with Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for European Integration, Olha Stefanishyna. Posting on X, the Polish Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the two leaders were set to discuss key priorities in Ukraine's ongoing European integration talks, alongside other issues including financial and military aid for Ukraine. In a separate post, Stefanishyna added that the meeting also covered Ukraine's NATO integration as well as the potential use of Russia's frozen financial assets. The Ukrainian official added that the upcoming Polish presidency of the EU Council is an opportunity to, quote, pay special attention to the issue of integration. Poland is set to take over the reins in the Council on January 1st of 2025. Protesters in Tibilisi took to the streets for another night in a row, demanding a return of the contested parliamentary elections and a return to further integration within the EU. The thousands that gathered in front of the Georgian parliament were met by police using tear gas and water cannons. For the 12th consecutive night, protesters in the Georgian capital were calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze. This anger was also directed towards Bidzina Ivanishvili, the founder of the Georgian Dream Party, who had his symbolic coffin burnt in front of the parliament building. Since the outbreak of the second wave of the protests, Georgian police arrested over 400 people, including journalists. The freezing of Georgia's Western aspirations is reportedly not limited to the European Union, but also now includes its NATO accession, following the recent accusations of election fraud leveled against the government in Tbilisi. Several former diplomats told TVP World that Georgia's progress towards joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has been virtually put on hold. The alliance could also soon be suspending its partnership program with the South Caucasus nation.
Joint exercises, intelligence sharing,
systematic observation,
and even entire operations run together. Georgia has been a close partner of NATO since 1994, but now all of that could be put on hold. The government of the Georgian Dream Party, after securing another term in contested elections this fall, froze EU accession talks until 2028, and that certainly hasn't been to NATO's liking.
The International Election Observation Mission noted the uneven playing field in which these elections were held, which undermines public trust in the outcome. Reports of election-related violations should be fully investigated.
In 2006, the Georgian parliament voted unanimously for a bill calling for the integration of Georgia into NATO. 2 years later, the organization promised eventual membership for the South Caucasus country, but at least several member states are now getting cold feet, according to a Georgian former civil servant with deep knowledge on NATO-Georgia cooperation. For security reasons, we couldn't reveal their identity.
It is fair to say that Georgia's NATO integration and membership process has been effectively frozen. It's obvious not only when we look at communication from NATO officials, but also documentation.
NATO's biggest military contributor, the United States, has already suspended its strategic cooperation with Georgia. The Noble Partner exercises, which were supposed to take place in the summer, have been postponed indefinitely. According to one former NATO diplomat, the entire organization could soon suspend its partnership program with Tibilisi.
Yes, everything is possible. There is no obligation on the part of NATO to maintain partnership with with the authorities, with the government, which clearly is violating a whole range of principles on which both NATO and the partnership is based.
Thousands of people are protesting daily in the Georgian capital, often met with brutal crackdowns by the police and special services. On Monday, the United Kingdom suspended all of its cooperation with Tibilisi due to the violence against the demonstrators and journalists.
In light of ongoing events, the UK will immediately suspend all program support to the Georgian government, restrict defense cooperation, and limit engagement with the Georgian regime government until there is a halt to this move away from the European democratic norms and freedoms.
The Georgian government is only adding fuel to the fire with its increasingly anti-West rhetoric. Political commentators from Georgia point out recent comparisons to Ukraine, a scare tactic by the ruling party.
The proxies of the Georgian government are actively disseminating the narrative that the country's Euro-Atlantic aspiration might lead to the conflict with the Russian Federation. And we talk about the Georgian society, which is traumatized because of 3 wars over the past 30 years.
Russian forces have occupied 2 Georgian territories of South Ossetia and Abkhazia since 2008. Being Russia's direct neighbor in the south, the country has been an important partner for the NATO alliance. The future of this cooperation now looks to be very uncertain.
A meeting of a new contact group for strengthening Ukraine is expected later in December. Composed of Kyiv's key partners, including Poland, the group stems from a proposal by German opposition leader Friedrich Merz, who was in Kyiv on Monday. This comes as a wide stream of aid is opening for Ukraine. The EU on Monday greenlit more than €4 billion in funds, while Merz has vowed to bolster Ukraine if he's elected chancellor early next year. The military aid he wants to deliver to Ukraine includes long-range missiles.
Friedrich Merz wants to ramp up support for Kyiv. He believes Berlin can do much more for Ukraine.
We are forcing your country to fight with one hand tied behind your back. This is not our position.
In contrast to Olaf Scholz, Merz is in favor of delivering Taurus long-range missiles to Ukraine and allowing Kyiv to use them to strike military targets in Russia. Merz also wants to create a new contact group for Ukraine, which includes Germany, France, Poland and the United Kingdom. The group may also include Denmark, representing the Nordic countries. And according to opinion polls, Friedrich Merz is the clear frontrunner to become Germany's next chancellor, well ahead of Olaf Scholz, whose Social Democratic Party has seen its support decline since the 2021 elections. Merz's visit to Kyiv comes just days after Chancellor Scholz was there.
The elections are a chance for Ukraine, and the likely victory of the Christian Democratic Union and their candidate for the chancellery, Friedrich Merz, is to the advantage of Ukraine, because the Christian Democrats have been, on the whole, more resolute and more norm-driven than the Social Democrats.
President Zelenskyy talked with the chancellor candidate about security guarantees.
Emmanuel Macron proposed that troops from one country or another could be present on certain Ukrainian territories, which would guarantee our security while Ukraine is not in NATO. But we need to have a clear understanding of when exactly Ukraine will join the European Union and when Ukraine will be in NATO.
EU countries have agreed to send additional €4.1 billion to Ukraine to cover state expenses.
In particular now during the winter, with the ongoing targeting of energy grid and other civilian objects, they are not giving up, and we are going to stand by them.
The US president-elect has said that his country's membership in NATO is dependent on the Europeans' defense spending.
If they're paying their bills, and if I think they're treating us fairly, the answer is absolutely, I'd stay with NATO.
But if not, you would consider the possibility of
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
We can show President Trump both arms spending, the highest among NATO countries, and investment in joint economic and defense activities at the highest level.
The Russian president has decorated veterans and widows of soldiers killed in Ukraine with the Heroes of Russia Gold Star medals.
Putin should think it's time to make peace because he's lost. When you lose 700,000 people, it's time. It's not going to end until there's a peace.
And Ukraine's attacks on Russian troops are not withering. The Ukrainian Security Service has shared video of Kyiv's drones called Sea Babies at work. The drones were reportedly effective in damaging ships and aircraft.
And now moving to the Middle East, the U.S. Secretary of State has said that America will be supporting the Syrian people in rebuilding their country. At a Monday awards ceremony organized by the State Department, Anthony Blinken said the United States has clear and enduring interest in the country, among them preventing weapons of mass destruction left in Syria from falling into the wrong hands.
The United States has clear and enduring interests in Syria. We have a strong interest in preventing the reemergence of ISIS, given the death and destruction that it's wrought for so long. We have a clear interest in ensuring that whatever weapons of mass destruction or components are left in Syria do not fall into the wrong hands. We have a clear interest in doing what we can to avoid the fragmentation of Syria, mass migrations from Syria, and, of course, the export of terrorism and extremism. The region and the world have a responsibility to support the Syrian people as they begin to rebuild their country and chart a new direction.
The Prime Minister of Israel has addressed the presence of the Israeli Defense Forces in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria. According to Netanyahu, only control of the Golan Heights guarantees safety and sovereignty for Israel. At the same time, the controversial Prime Minister thanked Donald Trump for recognizing the areas of as Israeli and said it will forever be an inseparable part of the Israeli state.
Together with Defense Minister Israel Katz and with the backing of all cabinet members, I instructed the Israel Defense Forces to seize the buffer zone between us and Syria and the positions controlling and adjacent to it. This also includes part of Mount Hermon called the Syrian Hermon. Today, everyone understands the great importance of our being there on the Golan and not at their foot. Our control of the Golan Heights guarantees our security. It guarantees our sovereignty. And on this occasion, I would like to thank my friend, President-elect Donald Trump, for accepting my request to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights in 2019. Today, this historic recognition gains stronger validity and greater importance. The Golan Heights will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel.
At a briefing on Monday evening, U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the U.S. supports Israel's limited and temporary incursion into the Golan Heights. He added that Israel had undertaken the operation to prevent Syrian outposts from falling into hands of terrorist groups. At the same time, Miller pointed out that the U.S. wishes to see an Israeli withdrawal to previously agreed zones in the future.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions in the area around the negotiated Israeli-Syrian buffer zone, which potentially creates a vacuum that could have been filled by terrorist organizations that would threaten the state of Israel and would threaten civilians inside Israel. Every country has the right to take action against terrorist organizations, and every country, I think, would be worried about a possible vacuum that could be filled by terrorist organizations on its border, especially in volatile times, as we obviously are in right now in Syria.
The prestigious Golden Globes nominations are here. Emilia Perez swept the floor with 10 nominations, and awards may also be in store for Hollywood's 90s heartthrob, Hugh Grant.
The nominees for the Best Television Limited Series, Anthology Series, or Motion Picture Made for Television are Baby Reindeer, Netflix; Disclaimer, Apple TV+; Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, Netflix; The Penguin, HBO Max; Ripley, Netflix; and The True Detective Night Country, HBO Max.
Emilia Perez, starring actor and singer-songwriter Selena Gomez, dominated the award show, securing a total of 10 nominations, including nods for Best Comedy or Musical and Best Director. Bradley Cooper's post-war drama The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody as a Hungarian Holocaust survivor who becomes an architect in the US, followed with 7 nominations. Hugh Grant is also in contention for his leading role in the horror film Heretic. This puts Grant up for his first win in over 3 decades since he was named Best Actor for 4 Weddings and a Funeral. The committee made a nod to Polish cinematography too. This included A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg, which follows the story of two cousins who explore their Polish roots in a heartfelt story to explore the family's history in an attempt to rebuild lost and often complex relationships.
I really did have an unusual introduction to Poland. My introduction to Poland was through my aunt, Doris. She is kind of a character in this movie. The characters are constantly talking about their grandma Dori. It's based on my aunt Doris, who was born and raised in Krasnostav.
As is tradition, the ceremony will be held in January next year, with Hollywood hosting a star-struck red carpet once again.
And so this would be all the latest news for now, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World as we'll be back with more news and features.